Welcome to the Moon Baby Magic podcast, a space to honor women's rites of passage stories. From menarche to menopause, the initiations of womanhood all live within our wombs. Through our first bleed to our last, we come to know ourselves more deeply. This is a platform to reclaim the sacredness of all of it. I'm your host, Natalie Elliott, birth keeper and women's coach, specializing in womb wellness and hormonal healing. Ready for slow and sacred storytelling? Let's dive in. Hello, women. Welcome back. We have such a sweet and special episode on the Moon Baby Magic podcast today. But first, I want to ask you all a little favor. I am really trying to get this show in front of more women. This year, one of my big focuses is to really put a lot of my focus and attention into making this podcast the best that it can be. I truly feel like these stories have the potential to change and shape and enhance so many women's experiences of their rites of passage. And that's because of the wonderful guests that I'm able to have on my podcast. And it would mean so much to me if you would rate and review the show. So on Apple, you can do that. You can rate and review right there. On Spotify, you can rate the show and follow the show. I'm not sure if you can follow on Apple. Shows you how technologically savvy I am. I am getting better. This podcast has really made me have to get better. But on Spotify, if you can follow the show, that definitely allows it to get in front of more people. And again, leaving those 5-star ratings and reviews. Thank you so much for your support in doing that. I feel like I always say that we have a really special episode, and of course, all of them are so absolutely wonderful. But as I was listening back to this episode with Kate Coletti, I was just really blown away by the amount of wisdom that's imparted in this episode. Kate and I kind of touch on anything from aging and how that changes your orientation towards life and your cycle and being in right relationship with the process of aging, as that's what nature does itself, to the spirit door and the womb mysteries and birth, and how that whole trajectory of pregnancy, birth, and postpartum is a mini version of our entire lives concentrated into one thing, and how we can't ever really know what's going to come up, to a lot of talk about holistic pelvic care for prolapsed tears and traumas, as well as what it is as a woman to be creation herself and how to tend to the roots of your body after that by breaking up the soil and allowing the devastation to result in your own personal super bloom. I'm so excited to bring this episode to you today. And a couple of announcements too before we get going is that the Women's Nourished and Thriving Retreat in Peru is halfway sold out. So we have 6 spots left for this really special retreat in Peru. And the way I've been describing the energy of this retreat is just like a coming home to yourself. And so much of what we talk about in this episode too is like coming to your roots, coming to your body. And more, I think I've shared this in the past weeks, what's been coming to me is just the simple truth of our bodies and what is actually happening in them, our actual physiology and anatomy, our relationship to touching our bodies and seeing our bodies. In this retreat, we're going to do yoni steams and massages, and we're going to have a whole naked day where we explore our relationship to our bodies with other safe women. If you feel the pull to this retreat, I invite you to join us. If financial difficulty is the only thing keeping you from this retreat, please reach out. Laura, my co-facilitator, and I are really passionate that the women who feel the call to come to this retreat are meant to be there, and we want to make it possible for you. So you can reach out to me on Instagram at moonbaby_magic, and I would love to connect with you there. I also share a lot of this stuff on my newsletter, and you can find the link for that in the show notes below. If you'd like to connect more deeply and be in an online space where we dive deeply on these topics, have monthly circles, book clubs, and a forum for questions, it's sort of like my Patreon, but it's not on Patreon. It's on Mighty Networks. You might want to join us in the Cyclical Living Circle. It's $13 a month, but you get a free week, and I think it's a really special space. So what I want to ask you before we get started with today's episode is, What if the parts of you that you perceived as broken or devastated were actually the fertile ground for the most beautiful super bloom to appear? Today on the show, we have a wisdom-filled and heartfelt episode with midwife and holistic pelvic care practitioner Kate Coletti. Kate and I chat about honoring rites of passage and being in right relationship with aging, finding compassion for ourselves through life's challenges, and perhaps most significantly, how your root, aka your pelvic bowl, is the source of your power. Kate's medicine is reminding women that they are creation herself and that tending to their roots and source will heal them, not just on a physical level, but much deeper than that too. Tune in for this healing balm of an episode. I can personally say I have had hands-on care from Kate, and this type of work is really special. And the amazing thing about it is you can totally find a practitioner, and I do highly recommend that. But you can really begin to work on your body yourself in this own way. And I think it's often a missing piece. I kind of briefly touch on this in the episode, but I think it really is a missing piece in women's conscious spiritual communities is this connection to our own bodies and bringing our loving hands, our loving touch to the core essence of who we are, the most powerful place in the body, as Kate says. All right, let's dive in. All right. Hi, Kate. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is fun because I love when I have women who I don't know at all, but we do have an interesting relationship in that I got to receive body work from you in Costa Rica at a really special gathering that we both attended. And so it's cool to get to know you more deeply in this way now.
Awesome. Yes, we did.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
did.
it's such a special moment for me. And I'm sure we're going to get into so much of how you got into that work, and I'm excited for that too.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. As I was sharing before we hit record, I love to just begin with orienting everyone to you. And so the way I like to do that is by sharing what phase of your life you're in your larger life cycle, and then also what phase of your cycle you're in your menstrual cycle.
Okay. So I'm 41. I just turned 41 last week.
Wow.
So I like to believe I'm still fertile, and I think I am. I'm pretty sure of that. And I also am well aware of all the changes. My cycle feels a lot more like polarized, like the months split into these days. And I might just be learning more thanks to you and a lot of other amazing educators and my clients and just my interest. But I also think that the symptoms are getting just a little bit louder. I'm just a lot more aware of my cycle. And so
Mm.
today I ovulated 2 days ago, pretty
Mm.
close to the full moon, and I still feel pretty good, but I know that shift is coming for me. But I'm still feeling like in that vibrant ovulatory energy this morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it's such an interesting place. I have the podcast when it comes back. It's on its little break right now. And so when all these episodes air that I've been recording over the last month, I've had a lot of women who are like 39, 40, 41. Like that like
Mm.
little age group has been like really popular on my podcast lately of the women who are like, yeah, I'm not there yet, but things are changing. And I feel like that's such an interesting space to be in.
It's such an interesting space to be in. And turning 40 was a trip. So let's see. I had just turned 40 when I met you last time. Yeah, because we met in
Yeah, it would have been last
February.
February. Yeah.
Yeah, and then by the time I actually turned 40, I was like, how could I still be in my 30s? Like I feel like I've been initiated and I feel like I'm in like my wise woman. I don't know, just like seasoned. I feel seasoned, not like a crone, not like
Uh,
a grandmother, but really in my deep in my work and in my
yeah.
power and knowing who I am. And
Mhm.
that feels really good. And weirdly to me, as our lens shifts as we age, of course, I'm like, 30 seems so young all of a sudden. It's just so funny. It's so funny. Of course, at one point, 30 was so old.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the changes are real. Some of the other things I noticed, just like sleep or what I used to be able to get away with in quite the same way that I did when I was younger, that kind of thing.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
so interesting. Yeah, the perspective too of the cycle feeling very polarized is interesting to me. Yeah, like having that probably distinct energy shift after you ovulate into that luteal space. Is that kind of what feels
That's what
really
I'm
different?
talking about. Yeah, but I wonder because you're aware of it, just like any of us, when we have anything going on with our bodies, but especially with our fertility and our menstrual cycles and other things like that. Symptom spotting is what it's called. When you're paying
Totally.
attention, there's so much more to fitness. And I'm sure this happens too with people in their diets or other things that they really focus in on. So I'm
Yeah.
wondering actually at your age, if you notice more dramatic shifts when you know that your hormones are changing, because I was a lot less aware when I was your age.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I hadn't heard that term, like symptom spotting, or like really thought about it, like when you have a lot of awareness around this stuff. I can be a bit nitpicky about my cycle, to be honest. Like I think about it and I'm like, I like in comparison to how my cycle was like in my early 20s, I'm in my late 20s now, and like was on like a vegan diet in my early 20s and wasn't taking good care of myself in a lot of ways. That was just one part of it, but I had like long cycles and I wasn't tracking and they were pretty painful, but I wasn't very worried about it. And now for the most part, I have like really healthy, consistent cycles. But if I like ovulate like a few days later than normal, or like I have a more painful day one of my bleed than I'm used to, I do get a little bit more nitpicky about it. We're like, what's wrong and what's happening and what's changing and how can I
What did I do differently?
so
Or
what did
yeah.
I do differently? Is it my diet? Am I working out too much or not enough? And I have to really soften the edges around that for myself and be like, yeah, sometimes it's good to notice these things. And I definitely use myself as like my best case study. So I try new things on myself because I'm like, I can and I can practice like healing different aspects of my cycle. But I think there's also a piece around like allowing the body to also do what the body's going to do sometimes. I think that I do notice quite a distinct shift into my luteal phase, but it takes a while. Like I feel like I have 5 to 7 days after ovulation until I really feel like I'm really in that energy. And then it's honestly, generally, it's like the 3 days before my period that I'm just like really in that.
Yeah, I think it's like, again, it's like more the whole second half. A lot of it, and this sounds really funny and vain coming from me. I don't know why I'm sharing this piece, but a lot of it is like how I perceive myself, how I look.
Mm.
I feel so vibrant, and then I feel so opposite of vibrant. And so that's one shift. And then it's cute. I was telling my son, even just like a few months ago, we were driving in the car and I was like, I'm PMSing. It only happens for 1 or 2 days. It only happens when I'm driving, but this is what's happening right now. And it's probably like a week or something before I bleed, or that just, yeah, like 5 to 7 days before I bleed.
Yeah.
And then it's cool. And then everything's right in the world again.
Yeah, I always feel like when the bleed, I love that you can talk to your son about that. I feel like that's such a gift and that he can receive that and know that. And yeah, but I think that it's like, I don't know, like once our bleed comes, for me, that's like the release. It's like
Yes.
I'm not anxious, I'm not angsty, I'm not like annoyed, I'm not judging myself anymore. Like once the bleed comes, it's just like a softening and like a surrender. But it is
Totally.
that lead up to the bleed that can be like quite edgy. And I do
Yeah.
know what you mean about the vanity aspect that sometimes comes in for me too. Lately, it's more in like relation to what I'm doing and not necessarily what I look like, where there
Mhm.
will be that inner critic energy of you're not doing enough in this aspect and
Mhm.
whatever. So I think it can take different flavors for all of us. And I'm sure women listening can relate to like their own flavor of that too. And I think that's also an opportunity to soften around it a little bit and be like, ah, it's okay. Some of that can be there.
To me, it's a factor of also just like being tapped in closer and to source, closer to like my inner deep wisdom voice. And that can be critical to ourselves or to those around us or to other drivers. But it's true, I feel like. Sometimes it's a little extreme, of course, and then you're like, oh, it's not so bad. The world is actually not ending. That's good. But it's not, and I help women preparing for birth who are getting really close to the spirit door in the pregnancy, late pregnancy side, and then coming through on the other side, that it's an access point. And that's like our luteal phase like on steroids, just so much more. But I prepare people for this because otherwise we end up gaslighting ourselves or judging ourselves, or our partners are like making us feel crazy when really we're just more sensitive.
Yeah.
I remember right before I gave birth, my partner left his ice cream dish in the sink. What if I had the baby? I was like, oh my God. Like I was like
Scary.
super sensitive and
Yeah.
particular and all the same things that I feel like I tap into in my luteal time of my cycle. And so while I don't know, I just want to make sure that we create a positive spin with all of our symptom spotting and complaining and
Oh, totally.
hard on
Well,
ourselves and others and that kind of.
yeah, and I love that. I love the connection to like preparing for the birth portal too, because it is like all of these things can be so related to other things we go through in life, like our menstrual cycle and the energies of that, and then in relation to the energies of birth, and then the energies of our larger life cycle. It's almost what you're entering into is like the luteal phase of your life, right? And so it's like having that sort of energy of like reflection and contemplation and what's working and what's not working. And I do agree. That's actually a really beautiful energy. And it's something I talk to women about a lot is like that inner critical energy that can come on that's like noticing things. It's like actually there for you. That voice is actually there for you. And I've done a lot of work to listen to that voice for myself. Sometimes she's like quite critical in a way that like doesn't leave a lot of room for compassion. But if you can like receive that like nugget of wisdom in there, you're really angry about whatever it is you're angry about, like what's the deeper thing there? Like you're
Right.
angry about someone leaving an ice cream dish in the sink. Like maybe that's not random. Maybe there's like a deep need that's not being met, and that's like the indication. And so it's cool to think of like how wise are the cycles that our bodies move through are, as they're giving us these opportunities to like tune in quite deeply and hear, like you said, that inner voice.
Yeah, absolutely. I love thinking of myself in that was like an aha moment as you were speaking during my luteal phase of my life.
Yeah.
And that just rings so, so true. I'm feeling that for sure.
Wow.
Yeah. And just the cycles within the cycles I was thinking about as you're talking about that. And as we were talking about, like just before the show, and how you always start with our first period, our like first bleeding time. And that transition that we go through puberty that's 5 years long. It's such an initiation. And the same thing happens in menopause. Haven't gotten there yet. And the same thing happens with birth and postpartum too. It's just concentrated into a much shorter, seemingly, transformation where it's more, oh my God, this time last year I didn't even have a baby, or I wasn't pregnant or whatever. And now I'm like a full-on mom holding a baby. It's abrupt, but all are pretty equally transformational and upgrade us and deepen us into who we are.
Yeah.
And I'm curious how this plays out of what that relief, what like the bleeding phase of my life, like
I'm curious too.
I'm like, ooh, okay. Like I'm not gonna let go of this for a while. I'm gonna be chewing on that for a while. I'm like, whoa.
Ooh.
So thanks for that.
Oh, yeah, of course. I know I'm curious about that too, like the bleeding phase of your life. That's why I need to have a crone, like a woman who's like really in her elder years on here and be like, so do you just feel at ease all the time? But there is, I think sometimes when I like look at older people who I guess are at peace with themselves. Not, some people say not every old person is an elder. You've got to claim your life and live it in a
Yeah.
way to like gain that wisdom to become an elder. But when I look at people who I do think really have that honor of being an elder, like they do look like they have a sense of freedom about them. They're just like everything is all right. And there's almost like a childlike innocence in them. And so I do wonder what that would be like too. I think about that. I'm obviously not near that myself, but I think about that a lot. What's it going to be like to be like an old woman, like a grandmother?
We're up against a lot a lot of influences that want to help us to not feel it. You just
Yeah.
think about that through all the phases and stages that we've just been talking about, to not feel it, to somehow mask it or minimize how much we feel. or we're like, again, gaslit for our anger or
Yeah.
whatever, or that kind of thing. And how it's easy to, especially with the symptoms that come with the discomfort, the embarrassment, the whatever that comes, or just the enormity because it has such a bad rap, like labor of being painful, that like we want to escape it and not feel it and somehow mask it, or we end up with a patch or some other estrogen something to mask and get us through. And I'm not judging, and I'm not even there yet. And I'm not trying to make it harder on us where and we actually don't get to pick or plan any of this also necessarily, like what the hand we're dealt is and how hard it's going to be and what kind of trials and tribulations come with these enormous initiations, these enormous rites of passage that we're talking about. And we don't generally, as much as I love my mom and I love the women that showed me the way, like a lot of times we're not given good examples of how to feel it and how to grow and deepen. And the only way out is through. And on the other side will be changed and upgraded and different. And that's how we reach the wise woman, in
Yeah.
my belief. And that doesn't mean it's not crazy. And that doesn't mean you didn't end up with an epidural, or that you didn't end up using some kind of like phytoestrogen or the little cream of progesterone from Whole Foods or whatever.
Yeah.
I hear people tell me all kinds of stuff all the time. And it is not about judgment. It's just about how do we want to do it ourselves and take on, especially those really tight turns in the labyrinth of it all, because it all is that way to get through to the other side and emerge with healing gifts to share with the world and to be really good examples for the women that follow us. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. No, I love that. I love the part about just like meeting all of it and like being willing to meet whatever hand you are dealt and to meet that with all of you. And I think that is, yeah, like what leads
Doesn't
to,
it take just so much to resist it too?
oh my God, yeah.
And you had work with me, and when I do pelvic care, I do holistic pelvic care, internal work with women and space holding, and it can be deeply somatic and have a lot of sensation in other parts. But I like to say,
Yeah.
feel to heal it. Just don't get stuck.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
totally.
and I watch people get stuck there, even with their menstrual cycles and pain that they're experiencing and things like that, where it ends up swallowing them up and
Yeah.
taking over their life, even.
Yeah, I remember you saying that to me after our session because I had a lot of like memories and things arising. It was a really deep experience for me. And I remember saying, I was telling you, I was like, yeah, and this, and what does it mean? And you were like, you don't really maybe need to like dwell on what it means. Like maybe it was felt and then it can just go on its way. And that was a really healing thing for me to hear, especially as someone who I can get quite cerebral about healing sometimes. And I love to think. I'm a big, I like intellectual stimulation, right? And so that was really huge for me, that moment of being like, oh, okay, I can just let that be released.
I love that. As you're talking, I'm thinking like it's called Blood Mysteries for a reason.
Right. That reminds me too of what I don't know who says it, but there's that quote that's if we were supposed to look in the womb, it would have a window.
Or a
Someone says,
mirror. I don't
or I
know.
don't know. So, anyways, but yeah, like it is, it's mysteries. It's mysteries, and not all of it needs to be understood from like a intellectual sense. Like some of it can just be felt.
And so much of it can't be understood, or we won't, it's like you're trying to put the pieces together. And maybe there
Yeah.
is like a trauma that you endured, or you're recovering from an intense birthing experience or something like that. And you know that's there. However, a lot more than that's there. And it's not just ourselves either. Like our ancestors
Yeah.
live inside of us. They don't live somewhere far out in the stars. This is
Yeah.
where it's so deeply mysterious.
Yeah.
And so I love that. And I think that
Yeah.
luteal time, just to bring it like luteal, like phase, like that time is access to that in a way. And same with the postpartum and like deep in the, of course, birthing portal, all of
Yeah.
it lends access, a lens to something bigger than we are, and helps us to remember, even if it's just for a second, that we are creation herself and that we are her.
Yeah.
And it's so beautiful. And then we pop out into our springtime energy and we're ovulating and feel good and feel light and stuff
Yeah.
like that. But that's beautiful and fun. And I personally would love to live there all the time until I get a glimpse or a sensation or something that brings me close to the spirit door again. And then I remember. And it's
Yeah.
about remembering. how powerful and potent and how much healing and growth and access and magic we all hold in our bodies and get to be awakened through these portals, these rites of passage, these deep initiations that we get to do as women. How fortunate are we?
I know. Gosh, that's a whole topic in and of itself is like how beautiful it is just to be a woman and to have all of these rites of passage and initiations like encoded in our bodies that like they're happening like on a very visceral physical level and that they're also so much more than that.
So
And
much
that's what I
more.
think is so cool is there's so much we do understand about the cycle and about pregnancy and whatever, like of course. But there's also so much that we, like you said, we won't ever fully grasp. And I think that's the beauty of it. Like the magic of it is that there's a very physiological aspect to these things, and there's also like the magical element. And that's what makes it so beautiful to be a woman is to be connected to that magic. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, I want to dive into your stories, and I'm curious where you want to begin. I know you don't have too much to say about your first bleed, but do you want to start there?
Sure. I don't remember it, to be honest. That I remember letting my mom know and being provided like a big box of Tampax tampons or something, and that was it. That was it. And I'm not upset about it. It doesn't even feel like heavy or disappointing at this point. And I don't know why that is, except for just it just was what it was.
Yeah.
And I was already, even though it wasn't like, I don't know where initially, it was more just like the hippie vibes of my high school years. And I worked at a health food store. I'm sure that didn't hurt, but I
Love it.
I got drawn into like this just desire to, my mom would make fun of me. She's, you want to have a spa for poor people. I think I just wanted like a wellness center or something like that. And
Yeah.
I went to massage school. I was 17. They let me go because I was going to graduate when I was 18. So they let me start. I finished high
Wow.
school early and went to my like 8-month massage school training so I could go to college on time with my class
Love-
and started that. And I was massaging. I went to App State in Boone, North Carolina, and I was massaging in front of a little earthy bookstore on a chair
So
massage,
cute.
dollar a minute vibe. And I was starting to get interested in birth. And so I would order these birth books on my dad's credit card that I had. And it was like an eBay spinoff, half.com. I don't know why I remember that, but it was like I
That's
would
so
just like
funny.
collect all of these birth books. And the woman who owned the bookstore was like, no. I was like reading probably like what to expect and you're expecting. She's like, you need this book. And she gave me Spiritual Midwifery. And
Wow.
it was like such a game changer. I just was writing the story in the book that I wrote actually. And I was like, I did enough dollar a minute massages to send myself to Tennessee to meet Ina May and all of the midwives. And I was off on my path and I ended up choosing to go to the Seattle Midwifery School, which is no longer. It was adopted by Bastyr University in Washington
Oh, yeah.
and went through their program and I got my midwife license when I was 23
Wow.
and started doing that. And that was really beautiful. I had no life experience, but I had my license. And so I did a lot of births. I did a lot of home births in California where I was living, and then took myself, my midwife partner at the time. We went to Africa. I went to Vanuatu in the South Pacific and just
Oh.
got to it was just so fun. That was my 20s, was being a midwife. And I was
Wow.
in that super maiden time and very
Yeah.
not renegade, but just like brave with just blindly, just kind of,
Yes.
I just was like on the journey. And then I became a mom and everything changed. And I'm still a midwife and I still do births every now and again, but it just opened and softened and changed my heart so much that I can't even imagine like the way that I was like romping about and doing births without, it's not like my heart wasn't in it or it wasn't a part of it. It's just, it's so different. And I've heard people say there's no such thing as other people's children and that kind of thing. And you can't even watch the news like postpartum or taking it, you
Wow.
take it all so personally. And so
Hmm.
that really impacted my work. And
Hmm.
so it also impacted my body. And so that's what I thought of when we were talking about doing this show together and coming on and talking about these rites of passage. I'm like, nothing was like that healing revolution of postpartum. And
Mm.
my body was really impacted by my birth. It was long and hard, and I didn't yet have that deep faith that I have now.
Mhm.
No, I trusted birth. I didn't know that. I don't think I trusted myself. And I ended up with a bunch of different interventions. And I'm not even, maybe it sounds like I'm still processing it. I feel pretty processed, not that you were ever finished processing that story.
Yeah.
But I've definitely completed the revolution of grief and understanding and met gratitude. And I can see that so clearly now in that it led me to the work that I do today, which is holistic pelvic care. So I was reaching out for help postpartum and couldn't really find the right kind of help. And so I became the right kind of help for women, especially who are healing and have their pelvic bowl, their like a vulvar tear, or prolapse, or symptoms postpartum that are making that their big thing. And that was my big thing for sure. If that's your thing, you know it. And I love to be a really deep anchor for those women and help them remember that they're not broken, that they're just healing and give healing hope and help them process that trauma out of their body so that it can live outside of them as a story, like I'm telling you now, and not something that kind of like clouds their lens on everything that they do in their life and how they see the world and how they see their body. Hence,
Oh,
I
yeah.
just
No,
that's
I love it because I have
still just the tiniest part of the story.
like so many threads. The first thing that's really interesting to talk about, and this isn't like the main point of what you said, but just like the maiden years, that's something that I've been reflecting on a lot as I feel like I was sharing with you about this a little bit before we hit record that I feel really embodied in my maidenhood these days. Like I've really like taken life and just made it my own in these years. And like that blinders courage thing that you're talking about, like totally. And I also think there's so much beauty to that. And for women listening who like are in their maiden phase and maybe like really in their early 20s or mid 20s or whatever it might be, where they're like really in that. I think that's a really important thing to do because it's the only time in your life when you're going to be taking the risks that like you take as a maiden. Like even now, like I don't have kids yet, but being 28, like some of the things I did at 21, I would never do those things now. Like I have too much sense or something. But like the fact that I did them gave me such rich experiences and put me on the path that I'm on. And so I think I just love that you like fully went in on this stuff in your 20s and like really created the way I've been thinking about it is like the maiden years create like the bedrock for the rest of your life. Like you really get to dream and pull in what you desire. And then once you get into like more of your fullness and your mothering years, it's like you just get to live from all those like planted seeds from maidenhood. And I just love that your journey started so young. I think that's so amazing.
Yeah, I feel fortunate. It makes it so that now I have 20 years under my belt miraculously.
Awesome.
But it's also just comfort. We all have different paths, of course, and
Yeah.
my like family path looks really different than I might have imagined it would look when I grew up in Georgia, and I thought it was going to be a lot more traditional and things. But I'm very deeply fortunate for my work and to be doing what I'm supposed to be doing, to know what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think you have to take the risks to figure out what you're meant to be doing. And the like those years of taking risks, it might take a bit of trial and error of, oh, I tried this and I'm not sure if that was the right thing, but then you have that courage to try something else. But yeah, I'm curious to hear more about your postpartum experience. Did you find someone to support you or like what was happening in that time?
It's a blur, as those times are, when
Yeah.
you're rocked. And I've reached out to lots of support. I was even like Googling like plastic surgery and stuff for my
Wow.
body. And then I
Wow.
went to pelvic PT, which unfortunately, even though she was like super duper nice, made me feel really more broken. Like, why are you like
Mm,
asking me, like to show you or do things that I
mm,
like
mm,
I'm at my very weakest? No, I cannot do that.
yeah. Yeah.
And my midwives were awesome, but I just didn't have nobody was offering what I needed. And I was going to go rogue and just start I was already doing body work and I was already doing midwifery and like somehow combine them. And then I started finding my teachers and I found lots of teachers along the way. And now I'm one of those teachers and I teach midwives. I have a class called Manual Medicine for Midwives to help bridge the gap in their learning and what they're already sitting there, what they can do
Yeah.
immediately postpartum to support if a mom has something going on in her root, in the foundation of her body that just opened
Mhm.
all the way. And then needed to tend to a tiny baby that needs you for every single thing while you don't have that ground. And I'm often reminding moms, like, it is enormous. Like, to be creation herself is a really big deal. And
Yeah.
it's too big of a deal. It's too big to hold. It's the biggest energy ever. And so we need to ground. We need the earth, the great mother, to steady us. We need to be
Yeah.
held ourselves. We need something to root into. And then we're sitting and holding and nursing and not able to really exercise or move our bodies. And the world is scary and crazy and all these things with this new baby. And so it ends up that we like start like tucking, and because we're sitting a lot, or you have to get up and tend to the baby, or you just have to get up and go to the bathroom. And so you end up doing this little like tuck and hold of your sacrum and your butt. And you're just
Mm.
trying to create a new ground for yourself, but you make it into it ends up becoming tension instead of soft and strong, like the foundation is meant to be. And so we end up being like tight ass moms instead of the soft, receptive moms that we are. And so we have
Wow.
to go in and redo that. And it's not just motherhood, it's other things that rock us to our root in our life. But this time, especially when we are wide open and it's so beautiful, and yet then left, and there's no village for a lot of us, and there's not great support. And so we end up having this coping come in, and the coping is important. We need to be able to cope with our lives. And
Mm.
sometimes coping mechanisms are incredibly important that they show up and come in when they do, but they're meant to be temporary. And let's remember that. And so if we end up not having someone to support and heal, like I did, I mean, I really made medicine out of my just like challenge and the difficulties and that enormous initiation that had to be enormous. It was making me into a mother. It was like initiating my new career and this bodywork modality that's so weird all the times. I'm like, how did this happen? Like, how am I sitting here today? And it is just exactly where I'm supposed to be. I feel
Yeah.
deeply fortunate, and I am able to help people so much, and I love it so much. So it's just it has to be really big. I had to be rocked to my root. And another one happened a few years later. I had separated from my son's father, and that was like already happening. We were together for 7 years through my 20s, lead singer of the
Mm.
band, perfect for my maiden person. And I love him
Yeah.
to death, but I'm really glad we're not partnered. He like owns a bar now and has like his whole like scene in life. But I love it. We're good friends. But then I
Yeah.
met guy when Jaden was like 3, and that one was again rocked to my root. And it was like the one time it wasn't on my terms that there was a separation. And just it's amazing how it's just another rite of passage. And we can't tell someone in the fire that like, man, you needed that.
Not
You
the
can't
right
do that
time.
to somebody. That's so mean. And it's not
No.
time yet. But we emerge through any of these rites of passage. And if we have felt it, if we had just to bring it back, if we've really felt it
Uh,
and experienced it, and sometimes like you need a lot of helping hands and a lot of sisterhood or a lot of something to get you through and to help you remember. And then we come out on the other side and it can be just the perfect medicine for our lives. And yes, man, I needed that. I needed it. Like I had to have it happen that way. It has to be enormous. And I'm even really super grateful for it now.
Um, yeah, it's so, I think about that often. And we chatted about this a little before recording too, around, yeah, you can't tell someone that it's like saying, oh, everything happens for a reason when something terrible happens to someone, and saying that is like the worst thing you
Yeah,
could
not
ever
what you
say to
say.
someone.
Not
It's
what you
like
say. Yeah.
not what you say,
Yeah.
because it's also doing a disservice to that person because they need to come to that on their own and in their own time. And you do have to feel it. And if you try to mine the wisdom from your painful experiences before it's like ripe and ready for that, then you're not going to mine the jewels from it because you're going to bypass the feeling. And the like jewels don't come from the experience itself. It comes from your healing response to it and like how you meet yourself in those moments. And that has to be natural and organic. Like you naturally and organically were like, something is not right in this postpartum experience. I need something more than what's available to me. And then you had to feel that, and then you had to be it. And I think that these moments like make us who we are. It's interesting. I just told my story on a friend's podcast, and the story I ended up telling was about how I got into this work because I would get lightheaded and nauseous anytime I tried to touch my yoni myself. And I was going crazy trying to figure out what was going on. And I even wrote a long thing on this, like a piece on this around, I was Google searching, like, why can't I touch my vagina and what's going on with me? And I was like seeking and seeking for what kind of wise women can support me in this, and what kind of wise women can talk to me about why my periods are so painful, but not put me on birth control and all this stuff. And I didn't find what I was looking for. And I think I wrote in that piece, I was like, I became who I was looking for. And that's like what these experiences teach us, is they like teach us the magic and medicine that we then have to offer.
Right.
But it has to happen in its own time. It's like the same reason like we can't rush birth. We can't rush the birthing portal. Like that has to unfold in its own time. And it's yeah, everything
You
can
can't
be
rush it, but you can't stop it either.
yeah, you can't stop it either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's when our like numbing or trying to escape it, or, and literally these convert this, it, like anything we're saying can be like applied to any of the stories, any of the timelines, any of the rites of passage or healing revolutions in our lives. And it's like, you just have to feel it to heal it, but not get stuck there.
Yeah. That's like your catchphrase. I love it. Feel it to heal it, but don't get stuck there. That's
It's one
such a
of
good
them. I have
one.
a million catchphrases. That's part of
Okay.
like when I'm from Georgia, like I mentioned earlier, and I was like, I always want to be like one of those like aunties who has all the one-liners, but theirs are like ridiculous. And I have so many one-liners, but they're so rich and so beautiful.
Oh, I
Um,
love that.
I can just I weave them all into a lot of my. They come in through in the sessions, and I've learned a lot of them through the sessions. It just came through. I
Yeah.
said it the first time, and I'm like, ooh, I love that. And then it's just through my teaching and stuff like that too. I think it's really helpful. I used to have a hashtag words to live in birth by, which has been
Mm,
totally watered down. I'm like, I would read other people like would use it. And I'm like, that's not words to live in birth by. I'm like, why are you using that? And maybe they still are, but yeah, I think it's helpful to have a one-liner, to have a affirmation, to
yeah.
remind ourselves, you will be
Yeah.
rocked to your roots, stay grounded.
Yeah. I wanted to bring it back to that too, the talk about the root and like being rocked to your root. And that's like the ground of your being. And it just, the way you said that, I haven't heard it quite phrased like that before, that being creation herself is huge and like it's almost too big, because then it's you've been opened so much and you have been rocked to your root, right? And then it's and who's there to hold you and help put you back together. And it reminds me so much too of what you said earlier around postpartum, like birth and postpartum being this like condensed thing where a lot of our other rites of passage are spread over a longer period of time. And the like big identity shift that so many women experience when they become mothers, like the biggest thing of, whoa, and who am I now? And all of a sudden I'm someone totally different. And
Yeah.
then needing to be held in your roots. And I just think that's such an interesting like way to think about it, and that like we do need other women often, whether that's like with the work you do or the village of like our sisters around us to help remind us where our roots are and like who we are.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I also like to just remind us too, like we are creation herself, we are her, we are like the earth is can be one of our greatest teachers
Yeah.
about healing. And if there's like a natural disaster, to be honest, a lot of women, not everybody at all, but a lot of women feel like birth is like a natural disaster, at least on their bodies. So you're, oh my God, and it will heal like everything, but it can initially feel like overwhelming and you don't recognize yourself. And another one that came through on accident was like, it's like a whole mother body. It's a whole mother body. And you might be proud of it. And you might even, you're healing all the time, of course, but it takes not 6 weeks. It takes a year to live in that body post birth, especially the first time, and a new identity. And nothing opens us physically and energetically and emotionally and spiritually as big, as much as that rite of passage. It's just a big freaking deal for good reasons, like we've said already. But if we compare ourselves to the earth and if it was like a natural disaster, like the mycelium get to work right away.
Mm,
The healing never goes away. It's already started. It just needs to be supported. And I like, yeah, I wish we all had a village to feed us and tend to the other babies and just get it, understand us and what we're going through and that kind of thing. But really, like, we need to find our own new ground and a really healthy foundation. Like, what I end up doing, especially if I see somebody like 6 months postpartum, which I would way rather see them much earlier. But first, we have to break up the soil. There's this whole coping thing going on of tension. And so we break up the soil and then we
Mm,
restore it to soft and strong so that she has a foundation that feels steady and nourished and healthy. And even just after anyone's holistic pelvic care session, probably my favorite part is all the other changes that happens in one's life once you restore the root. How we
yeah.
talk and walk and move and advocate for ourselves in the world. And womb alignment stuff is like that too. And I have my own personal example of that happening. Like finally, like I get some of the medicine coming back my way. And I was like, oh, once I'm obsessed right now. This is a whole nother podcast, but with uterine alignment and
Oh,
a
interesting.
bimanual approach to bringing the uterus back into her happy home, like a compass that's brought
Yeah.
back on point. So I'll resist the urge to tangent into that.
Well,
But it's
yeah, I'm curious to hear like you had the moment with that. Can you share like what?
Yeah, sure. Okay. So I was at a different women's gathering, not the one that we met at, but at a
Mhm.
different women's gathering and working alongside this masterful teacher healer, which was such an honor. And she was doing uterine alignments, and I was doing my holistic pelvic care in a tent next to
Mhm.
her. And so I could
Wow.
hear her. I could hear her the whole time. And I was fortunate enough on the last day of the gathering to have a very brief, like maybe a 10-minute uterine realignment.
Wow.
And I was probably it was dropped, like it was not, prolapse is not exactly the right word, but it was low lying like in my pelvis, hiding under my pubic bone, not where it's meant to live. So I had this
Yeah.
uterine alignment, and then I actually left that and I went to a training that was in visceral manipulation. I study through an institute called the Baral Institute, and it's so wild and subtle and amazing, and I could just go on, and I'll take these classes forever and ever. I've already taken the pelvic organ one twice now. But
Oh.
to have that, and then I came home, and this was all within like a week's time. I came home and I broke up with my boyfriend. I moved out of the house with him. I moved my office. Every single thing changed. And I could feel really confident in all of those choices because I knew it was up. I felt
Wow.
rooted. I felt like I had a ground, and I felt sure of myself, and I felt sure of the direction that I was choosing to move into. And so it could be a fall. It could be a birth. It could be sexual trauma. It could be so many things. And by the time someone's lived a few decades into their life, even two, it's if I did, like I used to have intake forms, like everyone would have a few pages of forms. As you hear women's stories, we have so many
Yeah.
stories, and the stories are beautiful. The stories are our life, and there are stories, but they really need to like move through us. And we need
Yeah.
to learn the lesson, and we need to turn it into medicine, and we need to move on with our lives. And when I
Mhm.
see women postpartum, and what happened with me, actually, another story for my healing journey postpartum was I went to a training when Jaden was very little with Tammy Kent, who wrote
Oh, yeah.
Wild Feminine and is the founder of holistic pelvic care, the modality that I practice, even though her class is only 4 days long, and it's wonderful. She's such a powerful medicine woman. And I know that what I bring is a very unique lens and all of the other trainings. And so just keep that in mind. If someone's offering holistic pelvic care, we all come from many different backgrounds.
Okay.
Trainings, it's not like a blanket, everyone's doing the same thing at all. But she's
Mhm.
powerful. And I went to her training, and she said, "Who has birth trauma?" And I was like, "Oh, I have birth trauma. Pick me." And she didn't pick me. And so I was like, okay, that's okay. And so I like did a trade with another woman in the class. But the download was still very powerful. There wasn't a lot of manual therapy even going down. It was guided visualizations and things like that,
Wow.
but internal work as well. And 3 weeks later, I was like talking to someone, and everybody has tiny children, and I'm a midwife with a baby myself. And these stories come up all the time. And my opportunity came up to tell about my birth. And I was like, oh my God. Oh my God, it's just a story. Oh my God, it doesn't weigh 1,000,000 pounds. Oh my God, it's like I'm healed. I couldn't believe it. And
Oh,
so I really think it's as simple as that. I really do. And not that it's always that simple, and not that there's not still going to be other processes that emerge that are linked to that. Or again, some of what emerges is like not even ours. It's inherited from our mother line or our
yeah.
and there's so much to it, and it's quite simple. Feel it to heal it, let that leave your body, have the laugh or the cry or the whatever. I also want to just say, because I've been wanting to say it like a few different times in our conversation, that sex is actually like the most generous, beautiful design of it all. And it can't be left out of this conversation because it's such a important part of our initiations through our bloodline, through our bleeding times, through our motherhood, through our lifetime. And I've already revealed a few times I've had different boyfriends, and that's just my path. And I love the relationships that I've had. And I've also learned to let them go with grace, or sometimes less graceful than others. Like that one story was not graceful. But anyway, sex and birth and what activates us when we go through puberty that even makes us interested in such things, and then we fall in love, and or what, however it goes down, and then the oxytocin that is part of the story of often our baby making and is a huge part of the story of our birthing, same. And then on the other side, our healing from that, which it's very easy to, if again you're wide open, now you have this tight ass and you're just squeezing and trying to keep it all together, and you resent your partner, and or there's three kids and you're going in different directions, like divide and conquer. It can be tricky to get it back.
Yeah.
However, sex is for lifelong a healthy root, a healthy ground, something like that's going to like tight vaginas are not a thing. If anybody needs to hear that, I don't know where that
Yeah.
happened,
What?
like when that like rumor got started, but it's all a lie. So tight vaginas are not a thing. We want to have soft and strong vaginas and pelvic bowls, and we want to be soft and strong. We want to be like really soft, and then when needed have something to match the pressure that's coming down from above, from like a cough or a sneeze or a jog or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
just to have strength that holds up everything else. It's foundational, like we've been saying, a soft and strong root. And so sex, as we get more aroused and we start leading with our pleasure, and especially if like you're in charge and you're intuitively unwinding, and then also like the endorphins are rising, and so if there's discomfort you have like more of a tolerance to that, and it unwinds the tension, it unwinds the trauma, it unwinds the storylines, coping, let's say that it unwinds the coping like mechanisms that have taken place for whatever reason. And then as we get more aroused, we're like drawing them inside of us, so there's this like lift and like
Mm.
drawing in and up, which lifts up all of our organs and encourages strength of the pelvic bowl, and will basically be definitely the most enjoyable way to lifelong have that really healthy foundation.
Wow. I
So
love, yeah.
you don't have to tell them.
You're like, hey, thank you for being
You
part
can
of my
keep that,
healing
you can keep
journey.
it to yourself. That's like just what you need. But sometimes we need a reason. And sometimes we've forgotten how good it is for us and why.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. It's like, I was going to ask you at some point, what are some steps women can begin taking to work on their root health and feel more of that soft, strong feeling you're talking about? And that's such a beautiful way, like connecting intimately.
Yeah,
It's,
and it doesn't, sex can come in a lot of forms, so it doesn't have to be that way, but it
yeah,
does bring lots of blood flow. Our own manual therapy and touching, like you had said, it was like you were having that, almost, it sounds like a vagal response to
yeah, so
touching,
crazy.
like looking, touching. I love steaming is like such a wonderful
Yeah,
ritual to weave in it. And
yes.
there's a lot of content out there now around that. And it's ancient. It's in most of our ancestry. It's been tracked all over the world. So I love that too. And I think just like listening to conversations like this one, really, like
Yeah,
it's like just so I'm helping you remember right now, like from
yeah.
my own wake up calls to it, this could be the wake up call. Like you don't have to have something that just, you don't have to have a natural disaster
So true.
to find this. And connecting with the womb, which is like that compass, and it's not that hard to palpate. I actually think it's really important that people touch their cervix. Wild to me at these women's gatherings where I feel like everyone is so tapped in and in the know, like how many women will tell me like, oh, like where is, like how would you do that, like where would you,
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh my God, it's so accessible. Like to me, internal work is like the loophole in the system. It's
Yeah.
amazing. You can just go right to this route that we speak of and have like full access. And
Yeah.
some people call it like mapping or things like that. It doesn't matter what you call it. Just pay attention to your body and also feeling the position of your womb, getting any kind of body work that's in these realms can really help have a guided tour of your own. And then with each different healer, we can like work to people work differently together and have chemistry. And I think a lot of us help with the work, help to transmute some of
Totally.
that energy and that kind of thing. I don't know. What do you think? Do you have some ideas?
Yeah. Yeah, I love this conversation and it's so relevant to like so much of my own journey when you were like and steaming and looking in the mirror. And for me, when I was having this response, it was like, I think I must have been in college, like high school and college age when I was like having a really hard time, like with my own body. And again, I just told this story in another podcast, so I won't go super into depth with it. But I had this, so many people, I would tell my friends, I was like, why can't I touch my vagina? Like, why can't I put my finger in there? It was like such a thing for me. And so many of my friends were like, why do you need to? Like, why is that so important to you? And I just had a sense that I needed to. It was like, I was like, it's my body. Like, I should be able to do that. And it wasn't until I ended up working with a sort of like a empowerment coach or like a sexuality coach, and we just had phone calls. And I had found her on Instagram when I was like 22 or something, and we would just have phone calls. And she was like, "Have you ever asked your body what she wants?" And so for me, it had to start with steaming because that was like the gentlest, non-invasive first step. And then I could use the mirror and I could look. And then it was more of a womb external massage. And
Mm.
now I have a really deep relationship with internal massage and like bringing my hands to my own body and inside my own body. But it had to start with the little baby steps. And so I think for some women, and I think when you say at women's gatherings, women don't know how to find their cervix, like I do think it's this like final frontier of like spiritual work is like the body. And oh yeah, our bodies are also wisdom keepers. It's not like outside of us. Actually, it's like within, like you were saying, like I can go straight to the source. And I think that, yeah, like often we have to start really gently because, like you said, so many of us have been through so much, and whether that's like birth trauma or sexual trauma or just like imprints that we carry from others, it's like a slow unraveling. And that's where I think support, like from someone like you, can really help someone. So they're not like in it on their own, like they have a guide and like an ally.
And it like leads me to just in case someone's like listening and does still feel broken or does still feel damaged or whatever from an experience or from a birth or whatever, that we are, again, just like nature, and the healing is real. We're not broken. You're not ever broken. Like you're just healing. And sometimes that can be a very long journey. Sometimes it's your thing, like we were saying too, and it's just going to it's going to take a long time. Like maybe it's more than a year. Maybe you've left it on the back burner for 2 decades and now you're just coming around to it. But
Yeah.
I lived for many years up on this mountain nearby here. I live in Sonoma, California, and we have fires. And so the fires blew through up there before I moved onto the mountain in 2017. And it was so ugly. It was like black ground,
Mhm.
black trees, houses burnt down, like not great. And my house was awesome. And it was like it had already healed a little bit, but getting there, like driving through some of that, it was just very evident. And then I stopped paying attention to it because I lived there and I was driving by all the time. And then I started paying attention again. And I was like, wow, it's so beautiful. Oh my God, like the springtime, look at these mountains. And then there was like a purple flower super bloom that only happened because those fires had come through. And it was epic. It was so beautiful. And I'm like, this is how it goes. Or I just told a mom yesterday who had recently had a cesarean birth and was early. She's just turned 6 weeks in her healing journey. And I was like it, and she's healing so beautifully. Everyone's scars so differently. I had to see it to know how it was going or give her some real feedback about what it was going to take and how whatever just tend to her beautiful healing body. And I was thinking like it's just going to become like a little light silver line, like it'll be part of the velveteen rabbit. And to
Mhm.
just love ourselves and know that we're aging. And this comes full circle back to like how I think I look when I'm in my luteal phase, when we're aging and I'm like, oh my goodness, these lines don't just disappear when I stop making expressions these days. They take and things are changing and it's okay.
Yeah.
And we're all just in our becoming forever. And there's something so beautiful about that. And to help each other by just like reflecting back. And my mom had a boob job and a tummy tuck, and she's not even like that. It was just what was, not like she's not like that, but it was just like part of what women were doing at that time. And she thought she needed to keep up with that. Or I see other women that I know, or my older sister even, who has had a lot of like things injected into her face. And I'm like, how is her daughter going to really like recognize her or think that's what she's supposed to look like forever? And so I just want us
Mm.
to like really like trust in like the grandmother and the earth, the great mother, and to hold each other, but to also let her hold us, to stay rooted and grounded and grow our gnarly branches and let things become more beautiful. They're not, youth is beautiful, but what comes from these deep scars or these natural disasters there, as they seem to be on our bodies, is actually super blooms and deep wisdom and so much beauty, way more beauty than we're broken or harmed or what we think is going on in the moment.
Yeah, I love that full circle moment, and I love the connection to the super bloom. It's yeah, and it reminds me of I think it's called kitsungi or kintsugi. It's like this Japanese pottery where like they repair
Yep.
the cracks with gold. That
Yep.
reminds me of that too. It's yeah, like it's we're all gonna go through stuff in our life, and some of that stuff is gonna be unexpected, and we repair it with the gold flecks, or then we have a super bloom. And some of it is also aging is a natural process. And it reminds us that we are nature, and what could be more beautiful than doing what nature does and like having a
Right.
time of youth and like you're this beautiful tiny little bud, and then eventually you're like a full bloom, and then roses are still beautiful when like the petals start to fall off, and it's just it's so perfect, and I love how you so beautifully articulated that. And I think so many
How
women
special, as you're talking to, like the cycles within the cycles, that there is this like lifelong, and like that I'm in my luteal phase of my life. Like I'm still like swimming in that. Oh my God, that's so powerful. And it actually is so interesting because as you come into your seasonedness, I'm like, and I'm writing this book and I'm looking for an agent right now, and I'm getting like rejected. And I'm just like, like questioning if it's all happening or if it's all going to work out. And that's happening, and at the same time I'm still cycling and getting these like spring blasts of like
yeah,
youthful feeling, like at the same, these cycles within the cycle.
totally.
I have, this is so random, but I have this client, this dear client for many years, who I help take care of, and she's 78.
Oh,
And she's told me many times that once a month, the outside of her pinky toe itches. That's like when, and that used to happen like when her bleeding time came. And that like, she swears that she is still cycling. And I
that's
believe that. Like we're
amazing.
still cycling. We're just different. We hold more of that power in.
Yeah, totally. That's what it is. It's like you don't need to like cleanse yourself of it every month. It's like you're just, what is that quote? They say at menopause, you become your power. Like you don't have to, you like outgrow the need to cycle. Yeah, we never stop in a way. It's like more, it's all happening within us, and we're able to hold that energy better. That's so interesting on her pinky toe. I love that little anecdote.
Yeah. And it's interesting, this resistance to the resistance to the range.
Yeah.
And I'm feeling that. I know that, first of all, talk about waking up your range, go through puberty, have a baby, go through menopause, like so much feminine range. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow, how much we can feel.
Yeah.
And heartbreak did that too. Whoa, look at my range that I had never tapped into. What if it all just worked out? I wouldn't have awoken that
Uh,
range.
yeah.
And to celebrate that, even though it's not always comfortable. And I think that is part about the graduation of going through menopause. Like the range gets all kinds of crazy and we can kick and scream all we want about it, but it's preparing us for this rite of passage. And not, and I don't know, I guess I'm like processing while talking right now. So I'm like mind blowing my own mind because I'm thinking about it.
I love it.
But there's just a lot there. And I love this conversation. It's illuminated so much for me too, just even though I've been like stuck in that motherhood rite of passage in my work. And not that I don't acknowledge, but I don't generally work with girls who are going through puberty or young.
Yeah.
Sometimes I have younger clients, but not that young. And then I haven't gotten there yet. as far as menopause. So it's fun to
Yeah.
explore the range with and have that conversation. And I wish that I was having it my whole life and not just starting now.
Yeah, now is the best time to start. But yeah, I think that's like part of the whole thing with this podcast is let's talk about all of these moments. Let's talk about going through puberty. Let's talk about birth and postpartum. Let's talk about menopause because these are like these are the powerful moments of our lives as women. And like the women who I've talked to who are in that perimenopausal, menopausal time, like they're uncovering like deep power and insight and revelation about who they are. And like that's no one's talking about that. That's like that's what they're hiding from us. It's not this, it doesn't have to be this terrible time if you face it, if you're willing to explore your range, like you said, like I think the menopausal portal can be like your entrance into the deepest version of your power.
Absolutely, 100%. And that thing that we were talking about, that what we've been talking about the whole time about when we go through these rites of passage or go through a hard time, a healing revolution in our lives that leads us to an upgrade that can't do anything, not create so much healing and growth for ourselves and in our lives. And it's reminding me as you're talking about the Clan of the Cave Bear series. You have to know. If you don't know, oh my gosh, everyone has to know.
I
Just
don't know. I don't know.
the Pink Bear series. It's so good, and it's too much to get into, but it's like humans, but early humans, and the wise ones, the elders. They're watching this love story go down, and it's so much drama. And everyone knows that they both love each other, but like they are learning and discovering and having their life experience. And the elders just look on, smiling and nodding
Oh,
and getting in the way. And that is like that does no justice to those books. I recommend them to everyone. Not all the time, but like I like blanketly recommend it. It's so cool.
I'm gonna look at
I don't
that.
know the women. I'm sure all your listeners would love it. So I feel like that too, as like now having gone through that healing in my life that led to my work, that I can hold moms and hold, like literally tend to their ground and smile and lovingly know that there will be a purple flower super bloom coming their way, even if they feel so broken right now and so much unlike themselves that it's actually the exact thing that they needed. And so,
Mm, thank you, Kate. I was just about to like end with the question of what piece of womb wisdom do you want to leave the woman listening, but I think that was it.
oh, good.
Unless there's something else you feel
So
like is
many
on your heart to
gems.
share.
I just want to remind all of us that like the womb is the center of creation and that we are her and that there's really nothing, nobody could argue that there's someplace more powerful that exists that we know about or more important. And that you hold that connection to source, that portal, direct line to God or goddess or however you want to look at it, like in your body. And if there's a place that you're going to pray to really turn to when you're going through it, like probably that would be the best place to start. And that all this is actually from my teacher, Tammy Kent, but all the medicine we ever need is in our pelvic bowl, in that medicine bowl. And that, yeah, it's all for our healing and our growth. You're not broken, just healing. I don't know, lots of one-liners.
No, I mean it's so important, and I think just that line that like you're not broken, like that is going to support so many women. And yeah, I mean you've shared so much wisdom with us, and I'm so grateful for this conversation. I know women are going to want to find you, so if you'd like to share where they can find you and a little bit about what you have for them
Sure.
offer, yeah, I'd love that.
Yeah. You can just go, you can reach me directly at my website, which is my name, Kate Coletti, COLETTI.com. And then my handle on Instagram is Wild Woman Wellness. I'd love to see you there. And I am writing a book I've mentioned a few times. It's very up for me right now. It's called Enlightened Birth. It's my birth class that I've been teaching for almost 2 decades that just kept refining over that time. And then through COVID times, it got online and got the core teachings got more concrete. And now it exists as a book. And I hope you will see that everywhere at some point. And I live and work in Sonoma, California, but I love to take my offerings on the road and you can often find me at different women's gatherings and things like that. You can also, yeah, I have a few online courses, including my birth class and my breast, belly, and bowl class and things like that that you can access online. But I would just love to be connected. Feel free to follow me and I'll follow you, and we'll just help be each other's ground and hold each other up and support each other.
It's so beautiful. I love that. And I'm so excited for you with this book.
Thank you. Really appreciate that.
Yeah. Oh, Kate, thank you so much. This has been so delightful. I've just really enjoyed connecting with you and hearing a little bit about your story, and just your philosophy on these topics is so inspiring to me and so beautifully articulated. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's an honor and a pleasure for me too. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into the wisdom of the womb today. It's truly such an honor to bring these stories forward to you, and it would mean so much to me if you'd rate and review this podcast so that it could reach more women. If you're looking for deeper support, you can find the link to join our online community, the Cyclical Living Circle, in the show notes below. There, you'll also find the links to book one-on-one virtual sessions, shop the herbal shop, and any group programs that I'm currently offering. Plus, you can follow me on Instagram, and I love to connect with you all there. All right, see you next week.